Good morning. It is Thursday the 4th of September 2025. I would like to welcome you to this month's meeting of Rotherham District Council's Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Brian Drayson, Chair of the committee. There are 4 applications on the agenda this morning, and I'd like to remind members please to remain in the chamber at the end of the meeting so that we may dissect some recent appeal decisions and identify any lessons to be learnt from them. Before we start, I'd like to remind the public that the Planning Committee is not a public meeting, but a meeting that the public may attend. Details of how people may address the committee in person may be found on the Rotherham District Council website. Joined in the chamber this morning by the following officers: Mr Mike Hughes, Head of Planning; Matthew Worsley, Development Manager; Sarah Shepherd, Development Management Team Leader; Paula Slynn, Legal Advisor Planning. Where's Paul? Oh, sorry. Paul Collick, Legal Advisor Planning; James Layback, Principal Planning Officer; Julie Hollands, the Committee Clerk; and Eleanor Drew, who's monitoring our webcast. Joining us online this morning, as far as the committee is concerned, is Councillor Nicola McLaren, who is able to take part in the debate and discussions, but as she is remote, she cannot vote on any final motion. Right. There is no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so in the event of an alarm, we're all asked to leave the chamber by the nearest fire exit and reassemble in the front car park. Everyone in the chamber is asked to make sure that their mobile phones are switched off or in silent mode. Thank you. And now on to the agenda. Item 1, minutes. Do I have your authority to sign the minutes of the meeting of the Planning Committee held on the 24th of July 2025 as a correct record of the proceedings? Thank you. Thank you. Agenda item 2, apologies for absence and substitutes. Do we have any apologies, please? Julie?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Mrs Cook. There are no substitutes today, but we do have additional members in the room. So Councillor John Barnes is here, so is Councillor Prochak. We also have 2 members online, which is Councillor Colleen and Councillor Mrs Kirby Green. And everybody else from the committee is in the room other than Councillor McLaren, who you explained is online.
Thank you. Agenda item 3, any additional agenda items?
No, there's none, Chair.
And while you're there, any withdrawn applications?
No, there's none, Chair.
Thank you. So agenda item 5 is any disclosure of interests and dispensations to receive any disclosures by members of disclosable pecuniary interests and other registrable and non-registrable interests in matters on the agenda, the nature of any such interests and details of any dispensations obtained. No? None? Thank you. Agenda item 6 is the Planning Applications Index. The final page of that lists the matters for discussion today by the committee. So we now move on to the applications. For each application, an officer will first present the report to the committee, and if there are public speakers, we will then hear from public speakers. We will then go into asking questions of the officers, and when we finish the questions, we then open it up for discussion. So,
Chairman, I wish to speak as the local member.
Yes. Yeah, you're on my list, don't worry. Right, agenda item 7, which is application RR2022/1379/P. The proposal is for the development of a site to create 41 new dwellings, including 39% affordable housing, with associated landscaping, amenity space, parking and provision of public open space. It is land near Bishop's Lane, Salehurst, Robertsbridge. And the reason it's before the committee today is that Councillor Prochak, MBE, has called it in on the grounds that the site was overwhelmingly rejected in the neighbourhood plan as the least acceptable, in that it destroys the green corridor in the centre of the village, access is via an ancient sunken lane with no pavements, used by pupils accessing the secondary school on foot, and a number of repairs having already been needed to the bridge as large vehicles cannot negotiate the S-bend. Traffic would automatically be increased in both directions. The recommendation is that it be resolved to grant planning permission delegated subject to satisfactory finalisation of conditions and the prior completion of a Section 106 agreement with the intention to secure the following heads of terms: the provision of off-site highway works as required by East Sussex County Council Highway Authority, financial contributions as required by East Sussex County Council Highway Authority, provision of informal play space and ongoing management and maintenance, provision of open space and ongoing management and maintenance, provision of sustainable drainage system and ongoing management and maintenance, affordable housing provision and contribution, local employment and skills plan, biodiversity net gain units. I won't go through that list again when we get to the end of the recommendation. We have two people speaking today. So the Planning Officer, James Layback, will present the report. And then before members ask questions of the Officer, the committee will then hear from the Parish Council representative and a speaker in support of the application, and then the Ward Councillor. Only after we've heard from those speakers will members be able to ask questions of the Officer. So thank you, James.
Thank you, Chair. Application RR 2022-1379P seeks full planning permission for the development of the site to create 41 new dwellings, including 39% affordable housing, along with associated landscaping, amenity space, parking and provision of open space. Members are directed to the update sheet which has been circulated. This details that the applicant has provided an additional plan showing indicative sections through the proposed main access. The update also includes details of additional consultation comments. This includes a letter of objection from the Parish Council, 51 further letters of objection, 1 letter of support, and comments from County Highways in response to photos that were forwarded by the local ward member. The circa 3 hectare site is located within the High Weald National Landscape and comprises of 2 adjoining fields, subdivided by a hedgerow running through the centre of the site. These fields are undeveloped and framed by mature trees and hedges. The Darwell stream forms the northwestern boundary of the site, while the site is bounded to the southwest by Bishop's Lane. A narrow historic field routeway defined by embankments with trees and hedges. The site falls outside but adjacent to the development boundary, with residential development in Bishop's Lane to the south and Willow Bank to the east. Crossing the site between Willow Bank and Bishop Lane runs footpath 44, a public right-of-way. The site is not designated as a local green space in the neighbourhood plan. Next slide, please. As noted, the application site falls outside the developed boundary and is not allocated. Development is therefore generally resisted unless a countryside location is demonstrated to be necessary. As set out in the report, the proposals would not meet the limited policy circumstances for new dwellings in the countryside. However, it is acknowledged that the Council cannot currently demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. As a result of this shortfall, policy restrictions relating to development boundaries are out of date, requiring the application to be considered in the context of paragraph 11D of the NPPF. The wording of this paragraph is shown on the slide and can be viewed in the report. Next slide, please. The application site was considered during the neighbourhood plan examination, with the examiner concluding that the local preference for the mill site over Bishop's Field was a legitimate expression of local views. The development boundary was therefore not amended to include the application site, as sufficient sites had been identified. The examiner did note that if the mill site had not been built, then the Bishopsfield site could be considered as part of the intended review of the neighbourhood plan. Details of large sites identified in the neighbourhood plan can be seen on the slide. The table shows that with only 3 years left on the plan period, these sites have yet to be built. And in regards to the mill site, consent for the development lapsed in June 2024. So while the neighbourhood plan did meet the identified housing requirements at that time, these requirements were based on the core strategy which was adopted in 2014, some 4 years before the neighbourhood plan was made, and prior to the introduction of the standard method for calculating housing need. As a result, current housing requirements are much higher. In addition, notwithstanding these identified sites, the neighbourhood plan is more than 5 years old, meaning that paragraph 14 of the NPPF does not apply in relation to paragraph 11D. Accordingly, the status of the neighbourhood plan does not affect the district's current housing land supply shortage or the fact that relevant policies are out of date. The main merits of the proposal in relation to paragraph 11 of the NPPF therefore need to be considered. Next slide, please. With regards to a sustainable location for new housing, it is noted that the site lies outside but adjacent to the development boundary, and a number of facilities and services are accessible within walking distance of the site. As members will have noted on the site visit, the application also proposes additional pedestrian routes into and through the site, as shown on the slide. County Highways were consulted on the application, and as detailed in the report, they considered that subject to conditions and a legal agreement, the proposed development would be accessible by travel modes other than private car. Next slide, please. In terms of the impact on the character of the area, including the High Weald National Landscape, the residential scheme would consist of 4 one-bedroom flats, 6 two-bedroom flats, 4 two-bedroom maisonettes, 15 two-bedroom houses, and 12 three-bedroom houses. This would be in the form of a mix of terraced, semi-detached and detached properties, and with a mix of 1, 1.5 and 2-storey buildings. This would be a policy-compliant housing mix. The proposed scheme is now a linear development reflective of the character of the adjacent housing along Bishop's Lane. The proposal retains a generous corridor adjacent to the stream and provides a suds attenuation pond to the southwest of the development, with the built form and proposed landscaping providing an opportunity to soften the existing built-up edges of Bishop's Lane and Willow Bank. Next slide, please. As shown on the slide, the buildings step up the site, with the proposed layout and the dwelling designs working positively with the sloping site. The external appearance of the dwellings is considered reflective of the High Weald vernacular, with articulation and visual interest created through the combination of dwelling types, heights, and projecting gables. The use of 3 distinct external materials, comprising of timber cladding, tile hanging, and Sussex stock brick, also helps to break up the elevations. Next slide, please. Turning back to the site plan on the screen, the vehicular access into the site would be from the south onto Bishop's Lane, to the west of the existing residential properties. As detailed in the report, Bishop's Lane is a narrow, sunken, historic routeway, with a width of approximately 4.6 metres in the vicinity of the access. The new access would have a width of 5.6 metres, with a 2 metre wide footway provided on the east of the access site. The footway also continues for a short distance on the north side of Bishop's Lane. To enable two-way traffic to pass safely, the development will provide a road width of 6 metres in the vicinity of the access, with a minimum width of 5.7 metres being maintained towards Heathfield Gardens. The proposed highway works are necessary to ensure highway safety, but it is acknowledged that in order to provide these improvements, some erosion of the lane within the vicinity of the access would occur. This erosion would be seen within the context of existing alterations along the lane. Next slide, please. The next one. Was it back? I didn't.
No, it's the access one.
Thank you. So the access would be near existing dwellings with private drives, with the proposed footway opposite the steps leading to Heathfield Gardens. The proposed access arrangements would require excavation of the roadside bank and removal of a section of hedgerow. To compensate for the loss, the landscape strategy proposes new native hedge and tree planting. This, along with the regraded embankment, which can be seen on the slide, would help to maintain some of the existing character. Next slide, please. The county landscape architect was consulted on the application, and following amendments, they recommended that the proposed development can be supported, as it could provide an opportunity to conserve and enhance the high-wheeled AONB by creating a high-quality development which redefines the interface between the existing built-up edge and the wider countryside. The high-wheeled units were also consulted, and they considered that the scheme has generally been successfully amended and addressed many of the issues raised in their earlier consultation response. They considered that the current, more condensed linear layout is less intrusive and a stronger response to the high-wheeled housing design guide. As discussed in the report, details of soft landscaping and building design can be conditioned to ensure they are appropriate. However, any potential amendments to the junction design to remove the footpath would not be supported by County Highways. This is due to safety concerns and to encourage non-car modes of travel. In regard to light pollution, this would be minimised via the requirement of a lighting design and mitigation strategy, which could be secured via condition. As such, while the proposed development would result in some harm, it would have an acceptable impact on the character and appearance of the area and would not result in a degree of harm so as to justify a refusal. As noted by the county landscape architect, the proposed development can be supported as it could provide an opportunity to conserve and enhance the high-wheeled AONB. In this instance, having regard to paragraph 190 and footnote 67 of the NPPF, the proposal is considered well located, being adjacent to the development boundary and existing residential development. Following the reduced scale and linear layout, the proposals are far less intrusive on the setting of the area, with the landscape-led design affording the opportunity to soften the existing built edge of Bishop's Lane and Willowbank. As such, the proposal is not considered to be a major development in the high-wheeled national landscape. Next slide, please. Turning to highways and transport impacts, both national and county highways have appraised the scheme. National Highways did not consider that the proposals would have an unacceptable impact on the A21 trunk road and raised no objection subject to standard conditions. East Sussex Highways and Rights of Way assessed the proposals in terms of the site access for pedestrians and vehicles, traffic generation and highway impact, internal layout, on-site parking, and the diversion of footpath 44. They have no objection to the proposal subject to standard conditions. They have also requested off-site works and financial contributions, which include those shown on the slide. In addition, as noted in the committee update report, photos of vehicles that have been involved in incidents were forwarded by the local ward member. These were reviewed by County Highways with their full comments provided on the update sheet. County Highways concluded that the additional traffic generated by the development proposal is unlikely to have a detrimental impact on highway safety. For these reasons, and subject to conditions and completion of a Section 106 agreement, the proposed development is acceptable in relation to highway and transport impacts. Next slide, please. Turning to affordable housing, the application would provide 16 affordable homes on site, which equates to a 39% on-site affordable housing provision. The additional 1% would be achieved by way of a financial contribution. The homes would be delivered as 65% affordable or social rented housing, which is 10 units, and 35% shared ownership, which is 6 units. The Council's Housing Enabling and Development Officer is supportive of the application, including the layout and provision proposed. With regards to DASA policy DHG6, which seeks to secure the provision of service plots for self and custom house builders, it should be noted that no service plots are proposed as part of the scheme. While there is a failure to meet policy DHG6, in this instance, given the nature of the waiting list and the fact that much needed market and affordable housing are being provided, this non-compliance with policy would not be considered a reason on its own for refusing the application, but this will need to be considered as part of the planning balance. With regards to flood risk and drainage, the development red line boundary is in flood zones 1, 2 and 3. The area proposed to be developed for residential units is, however, only in flood zone 1. The Environment Agency were consulted on the application and they raised no objection subject to conditions. With regards to the disposal of foul sewage, Southern Water were also consulted on the proposals. They would require formal applications to be made by the applicant to divert the public sewer and for a new connection. Subject to conditions, Southern Water raised no objections to the proposed foul or surface water drainage and did not raise any concerns regarding the capacity of the system. With regards to the disposal of surface water, following initial objections from the lead local flood authority, revised proposals for surface water were submitted. These address the objections, with surface water to be attenuated on site via a crate system and pond discharging into the Darwell stream at Greenfield rates. Subject to conditions, the proposed development is acceptable in relation to flood risk and drainage. Turning to the amenities of neighbouring properties, as members will have noted during the site visit, the application site is bounded by existing dwellings on Bishop's Lane to the south and Willow Bank to the east. The majority of the dwellings on Bishop's Lane bounding the site have long rear gardens, separating them from the application site, and they sit at a higher ground level. The closest dwellings on Bishop's Lane to the proposed dwellings are Courcy Croft and the Spurs, which are located near the proposed main access. Courcy Croft would be approximately 19 metres from the south-east elevation of plot 21, while the proposed single-storey substation would be located some 9.5 metres to the west. The neighbouring property, the Spurs, would be some 26 metres from the rear elevations of the closest proposed dwellings, which would be plots 22 and 23. Turning to Willow Bank, the closest existing dwellings are numbers 14 to 22. Except for numbers 20 and 21, these dwellings would all be more than 20 metres from the proposed dwellings, with existing and proposed trees and vegetation separating them. Given the measure of separation, the retention of existing trees and vegetation on the site boundaries, together with new tree planting and boundary treatments, it is not considered that the amenities of any properties in Bishop's Lane or in Willow Bank would be unreasonably harmed by the proposals. And in addition, a construction management plan, as well as restrictions on construction hours and deliveries, would address noise, dust and light impacts during the construction phase of the development. Accordingly, subject to conditions, the proposed development is acceptable in relation to potential impacts on the amenities of neighbouring properties. In terms of ecology and biodiversity, it is noted that the application was submitted before the biodiversity net gain became a mandatory requirement. Various ecological documents have been submitted in support of the proposals. These were all reviewed by the county ecologist and by NatureSpace in relation to great crested newts. They both consider that the proposed development can be supported from an ecological perspective, subject to conditions. In terms of biodiversity net gain, while the proposals fall outside of mandatory requirements, an expectation for net gain is set out in the NPPF. The submitted information suggests the proposals would result in a loss of habitat units. This loss is expected to be secured through the purchase of off-site units, which is acceptable. Final details of the off-site units required can be conditioned, with the units secured as part of any Section 106 agreement. In considering heritage impact, the proposals would not cause harm to designated heritage assets or to their settings. And in regards to below-ground archaeology, the proposals would be subject to a programme of archaeological works which would be secured by condition. Next slide, please. Turning to the planning balance and conclusion, it is acknowledged that the Council cannot currently demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. It is also noted that the neighbourhood plan is more than 5 years old, meaning paragraph 14 of the NPPF does not apply in relation to paragraph 11D of the NPPF. Having regard to paragraph 11D1, this states that permission should not be granted when the application of policies in the NPPF that protect areas of particular importance, such as national landscapes, provides a strong reason for refusing the development proposed. It is therefore necessary to consider if the development would present harm to the national landscape, and if so, would that harm outweigh the benefits for non-major development in the High Weald national landscape. In this regard, and as detailed within the report, the proposed access would require excavation of the roadside bank and hedgerow, which would have an adverse impact on the historic routeway of Bishop's Lane. This localised harm is acknowledged, with the landscape strategy proposing new hedge planting to partially compensate for this loss. Given the greenfield nature of the site, the development would see the introduction of built form, hard surfacing and associated infrastructure, which would clearly change the landscape character of the site. This, however, does not mean that the national landscape designation precludes development. And as highlighted in the report, the central hedgerow within the site would be retained and the landscape would be enhanced with new planting. In addition, there would be beneficial impacts from the High Weald vernacular design and a landscape-led approach which redefines and softens the interface between the existing built-up edge and the wider countryside. As such, the proposals would not have a significant adverse effect on the High Weald national landscape. In this regard, it is considered the economic, social and environmental benefits associated with boosting the supply of housing and the provision of much needed affordable housing would outweigh the harm to the landscape and scenic beauty of the High Weald national landscape. As such, the harm to the High Weald national landscape would not constitute a strong reason for refusing the proposal. Accordingly, paragraph 11D2 of the NPPF is engaged. As identified, there would be some harm to the High Weald national landscape and the historic routeway of Bishop's Lane, and the proposal would have a neutral effect on the setting of a Grade 2 listed building. Great weight is attached to these harms. In addition, the proposal would not provide service plots for self and custom house builders. Against this, there is the pressing need for housing when considering the current shortfall. As such, the delivery of 41 dwellings, which are in a sustainable location, make a significant contribution towards the area's housing supply. The delivery of market housing attracts significant weight in favour of the proposal. This is also the case for the delivery of affordable dwellings. Given the significant need for affordable housing, the provision of a policy-compliant affordable housing offer is a significant benefit of the proposed development. The proposals provide housing for a range of differing household types and sizes, and in relation to matters such as impacts on character and appearance of the area, biodiversity, highway and transport, neighbouring amenity and drainage issues, the use of conditions and a planning obligation would make the development acceptable in planning terms. The development would provide jobs, but this would largely be limited to the construction phase. The proposal would be in good proximity to services and facilities with alternative options to car travel. New residents would also support local services and facilities through increased expenditure. These social and economic benefits attract moderate weight in favour of the proposal. Furthermore, the scheme would result in upgrades to the existing bus stops, improvements to pedestrian access, and secure a financial contribution of £1,100 per dwelling towards bus service improvements, a significant benefit. The housing development also represents a suitably high quality design. It would retain and reinforce existing planting and enhance with new native planting, along with improved public access. Accordingly, in this instance, it is considered that planning benefits of the development would not be significantly and demonstrably outweighed by adverse impacts when assessed against the NPPF as a whole. Having particular regard to key policies for directing development to sustainable locations, making effective use of land, securing well-designed places and providing affordable homes. It is therefore recommended that planning permission is granted, subject to satisfactory finalisation of conditions and the completion of a Section 106 agreement with the intention to secure the heads of terms as detailed in the report and shown on the slide. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Now the officer has presented his report to the committee, we now move to the public speaking section of the meeting. Each speaker will have up to 5 minutes to address the committee based on their previous written submissions. New information cannot be introduced at this stage of the proceedings. I'll interrupt anyone who's still speaking at the 5-minute mark. I will call you forward, and if you introduce yourselves, don't worry, the clock won't start till after you've introduced yourselves. And the first one is Salehurst and Robertsbridge Parish Council Representative Councillor Sean O'Hara, who I believe is chair of their planning committee. Morning, Councillor.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you on behalf of Salehurst and Robertsbridge. The community are aware that this site is outside the village development boundary and was explicitly excluded from the neighbourhood plan made in 2018. The independent examiner accepted our position that the other sites in the plan should provide sufficient space for the 155 dwellings target to be met. There was extensive community engagement during the 3-year process to create a strong neighbourhood plan with sensible sites that would allow development in such a way as to preserve the essential character of the village, and it was overwhelmingly supported in the referendum. Since 2018, nothing has changed, or has changed our view that development of this site would be clearly inappropriate. This is confirmed by the numerous responses to the previous applications in 2022 and 2024 and the current application, and particularly those raised by Salehurst and Robertsbridge Parish Council and the Sussex branch of Council Protection of Rural England, which focus on conflict with the neighbourhood plan and harm to the high wheeled national landscape. Numerous residents have submitted comments pointing out that the neighbourhood plan represents the considered views of the community and should be respected. As democratically elected members of the District Council, we assume you will appreciate the adverse impact on the principles of local democracy of a decision to approve this application. The committee had an extensive tour of the site and its surroundings earlier this week. Having done this, we hope you would agree that this site should not qualify for approval on the basis of any presumption in favour of development as provided for in national planning rules, since there clearly are harms which significantly and demonstrably outweigh any benefits it could provide, again as set out in national planning rules. In particular, the development would have an extremely adverse impact on the visual character of the village when viewed from the western approach. Bishop's Lane itself is a historic and narrow sunken drover's lane lined with long-established woodland and hedgerows. The proposed Bellmouth entrance and pavement would ruin the traditional rural appearance of this route, which is already at full capacity, particularly during the school run and rush hour when it is used to avoid the level crossing. We disagree with the Highways assessment that the lane can safely handle additional traffic. Although no dwellings have been built as yet on the current neighbourhood plan sites, we have recently been told by Homes England that their site investigations have not identified any major issues to hinder development both on the original mill site in the neighbourhood plan, which is expected to deliver 98 dwellings, as well as the adjoining open field site, which, while not in the current neighbourhood plan, Homes England have actually purchased. And this should be able to accommodate approximately 30 to 40 additional dwellings, certainly including more affordable ones. Homes England aims to apply for planning permission for both sites during 2026. There is also already planning permission in place for the Grove Farm site, circa 30 dwellings, while the 2 sites near Heathfield Gardens have now reached agreement to proceed, and the developer hosted a public presentation of its outline plans towards the end of last year. Although outside the neighbourhood plan, we also expect development to commence at the Culverwell site on Station Road very soon to build a new GP surgery medical centre along with 21 residential dwellings. The Parish Council aims to publish a consultation to revise our own neighbourhood plan before the end of the year to take account of RDC's own proposed changes to its own local plan, which of course is also out of date currently. And more recently, we have been looking at other neighbourhood plans that have been more recently made by other neighbouring communities, such as Hurst Green. I think that summarises our position. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Hara. Thank you. We don't have anyone speaking against it today, specifically from the objectors, but we do have one speaker for, which is Luke Eldridge from Divine Homes. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and members of the Planning Committee. My name, as just said, is Luke Eldridge from Divine Homes. And I'd like to thank you for the opportunity of speaking today in support of our planning application for 41 new homes off Bishop's Lane, Robertsbridge. Like many communities across Rother, Robertsbridge is facing real pressures within when it comes to housing needs, and this application will help to address housing supply issues. Our scheme has been designed to deliver a broad mix of houses, including bungalows, providing opportunities for first-time buyers, young families and downsizers alike. As has been discussed in this application, with the neighbourhood plan now more than 7 years old, the site will make a positive contribution to meet local housing needs within the village and across Rother more generally. This is even more important given the allocations within the plan have still not to date been realised. In fact, the site was highlighted in the neighbourhood plan by the neighbourhood plan inspector as a suitable location and development opportunity in the event that the proposed sites were undelivered. We have worked closely with your officers and have responded positively to feedback through the application. The scheme before you today has been amended in response to comments and represents a sustainable and integrated extension to the village, which responds positively to the character of the village. We are delighted that this hard work in amending the scheme has resulted in both the support of the High Weald Landscape Character Consultee and Landscape Officer, who are now supporting the scheme. The development is truly landscape-led, with over 60% of the site being given up for public open space, and comprehensive landscaping schemes to support biodiversity and improvements to pedestrian connectivity and public access to the Darwell stream, all of which will benefit the community of Robertsbridge. More importantly, the site is delivering policy-compliant affordable housing, with many sites locally struggling to meet local affordable housing requirements. I'm delighted to confirm to the members of the committee today that we have terms agreed with Orbit Group to secure the affordable housing, which will further confirm that this site is deliverable. Significant contributions will be made through Section 106 and SIL to ensure that the development delivers long-term community benefits. I understand that new developments can raise concerns, but I firmly believe this is a well-considered, balanced proposal that responds to local need, respects the character of the area and brings lasting benefits to Robertsbridge. With the positive officer's recommendation and no statutory consultee objections and support from County Highways, I respectively urge the committee to approve this application and allow Robertsbridge to grow in a sustainable, inclusive and forward-looking way. Many thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Eldridge. And now, Ward Councillor, Councillor Projak, please.
Thank you very much. And thank you, committee. You are the decision-making body today. And thank you very much for visiting the site. Residents will be pleased to know that you actually went up on the site, you walked over to Willowbank, you saw the hedges, and you actually walked down towards the two S-Bends. So you actually, and then you went in the bus through the two S-Bends and looked at the site from the village hall. So thank you for doing that. Long may site visits continue. What somebody asked me on the site is, why are there only one objector, the parish council? Where are all the other objectors? Because there are, because the parish council ran a very, very well-attended consultation, and they have responded, as you've seen from the letter that arrived. Well, it was in time, but it didn't get in time for you to have it on the portal. So the other thing that the parish council have done is, as was mentioned already, they had a robust neighbourhood plan. I can't tell you how robust it was, with several meetings, several consultations, and every consultation, and the final one, a questionnaire delivered to every household, there was 97% approval for the mill site. This site was roundly rejected. And as I mentioned, the examiner said, but look at this site if nothing's happened. Well, nothing has happened as anywhere, if you look at other neighbourhood plans, but now it's happening. And Homes England have bought the mill site. It's going to be 100 plus houses there, and they've had one consultation already. So that is happening, and the other sites are happening. I just want to say about the neighbourhood plan, because our officer tended to reject it because, out of date, everything's out of date. However, there is no legal requirement for a 5-year review on neighbourhood plans. What we have still on the table, and we can't dismiss it, is our own local plan and the neighbourhood plan. The neighbourhood plan has got as much legal standing as our own core strategy. It's equal to. So don't dismiss the neighbourhood plan. And don't dismiss it, because that's where the objectors are. They've already said, look, we told you. We've told you many times, we don't want this site. And if we did the questionnaire again today, we would have the same result. It's premature. This site is not ready. I wanted to talk a little bit, if you allow me, about the access. We've talked a lot about the access. Bishop's Lane. The clue is in the word lane. It's a lane. And it's not a very safe lane. I mean, highways, we won't talk about that, our opinion of highways, but highways have said it's perfectly fine. Well, it's not. You visited not in peak time, not in school time, and it was busy. And remember, there are 98 dwellings at Heathfield Gardens, used to be Rother Homes, 98 dwellings that come down that stairway that you looked at. And there's a further 43 dwellings at the top of Bishop's Lane. And they said that nobody's going to go west. Well, of course they are going to go west, because as has been mentioned, it's a rat run to avoid the level crossing. And the photographs that I put on the portal, which were dismissed by East Sussex County Council because there's no evidence, we don't know who they are, we don't know when it happened, fair enough. But there are many, many, many more. And East Sussex County Council have not mentioned the fact that their own contractors have mended that bridge at least 3 times. We've pulled 2 cars out from the river nearly. And why don't they ask their contractors? Perhaps that doesn't count the cost to the taxpayer of actually rebuilding that bridge. And are the school children going up to the college, are they going to come down those steps, go up to the new site, walk along inside the hedge, and come down at one of the most tricky points in the whole of that lane where it turns into over the river? Are they going to do that? Kids don't do that. They go the straight way. What I really would like to emphasise, though, is that Bishop's Lane is what they call a hollow way. It's from the Old English, hola veg, and it's thousands of years old. They're ancient pathways, thousands of years old. And why they're ancient is because farmers, drovers, people, livestock, wore them away. So they're sunk. And you will see that from the very, very high banks.
Thank you, Councillor. We were all hooked on that. but your 5 minutes is up.
Can I break the rules?
No. Because if I break them for you, it'll come back to bite me next time. Thank you. I don't think your point was lost because I cut you off then. I thought it was a very good address, if I can do a personal opinion. Thank you. Well, I'd love to have a set of lights here or so, because I was trying to, but she was obviously reading what she was saying and not seeing me going wind up. So thank you.
Chair, I do have a chance to come back in summing up, don't I?
Yeah. I'll let you contribute to this. Right, so members can now ask questions of the officer, please. Councillor Mrs Mary Barnes.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Why are we now hearing so late in the day the information about the mill site? I mean, I think I gathered from the chairman of the parish council that we're now talking about 190, did he say, houses in the pipeline which are going to be social rented, affordable. What is the situation there? Because quite clearly it says it's all going to happen. I mean, that is my question. I actually have another question as well, and that is that there's a pipeline which apparently is going to make part of this so-called leisure area of the site a bit tricky. I was there when, I watched those pipes going in on the Darwell reservoir. Those things are about 4 foot high. Each section is enormous. So it strikes me that, first of all, I need to know a little bit about the mill site, because I think that is absolutely crucial to any decision making we do today.
Thank you. Sarah.
Yes, the mill site is being reconsidered again by Homes England. We've not had an application. They have had some preliminary discussions, but we've not had an application. They are proposing to extend the site, and that has not been discussed yet. There are concerns that that site is higher and more visible to a wider area, so that's a discussion that we've yet to have. The point that was made earlier was that, none of the housing that's within the neighbourhood plan has yet been built. Even if we do get the mill site, looking at the new housing figures that we need to provide, then they're going to need to look at other sites as well within the local plan review. So even if the mill site comes forward, we're now in a situation 7 years on where our housing requirements are much higher, and we're going to be looking for more housing across the district and within the areas that are considered to be sustainable. So yes, there are some initial chats going on about development of the mill site, but that's in the early stages still.
Thank you. Councillor Mear.
Can I just clarify something about Hodson's Mill? I've looked at the website which Homes England has and about how it's proceeding. I think the first point is that they've actually acquired the site, which they did in March 2024, which is clearly something they wouldn't do unless they expected to proceed, and I expect that we all welcome that. They've already had their early technical studies and surveys running up until spring this year. They've completed their early listening and community engagement. They've finalising technical assessments and modelling running up until this autumn now. Community workshops and draft master plan options this autumn upcoming. And community engagement on detailed master plan autumn and winter 2025. So, I mean, the point of information is that it's very actively being pursued by Homes England, and I personally would be very, very surprised if an application didn't come forward, and quite quickly, and if it were to be granted, that it would be built quickly. So I'm not saying where this fits in with planning policy, but I think that's a factual matter which needs to be in front of the committee.
Thank you. Just a reminder, councillors, this is for questions at the moment to the officer, and not statements. No, that's okay. Have you got a question?
And
Question mark.
I do have some questions, but I will say I would conclude my remarks with, and would the officer like to comment on that? And then it is a question. No, I do have some other questions, yes, of the officer, if I may.
Yeah.
The first one is the width of the carriageway. It's being widened to 5.5 metres, and there will be a footway. Is the footway included in the 5.5 metres, or is it 5.5 metres plus footway?
I believe it's plus footway.
And access to the preserved green space towards the river, towards the stream, that access, public access, is being restricted to that in the interest of wildlife.
There's no longer sort of footpaths proposed through there as there were in earlier schemes. There's sort of a hedgerow. I don't know if we can get the slide up. Might be easier to explain. But essentially, the public would be able to sort of get into there. There are sort of gaps in the hedge, but it is predominantly reserved for the wildlife there, with it also sort of falling within the sort of flood risk area by the stream. Sort of having the footpaths there, it was decided to move those routes outside of the flood zone.
So there won't be a fence to exclude people.
If you look on the screen there, you can see that there is the sort of hedgerow sort of running towards the north of the site, but there is sort of a gap towards sort of the Willow Bank end where you can get in for access, and then also a further gap in the hedge. So there is access through that, but it's not open with a footway, as it were.
That answers that. Thank you very much. And I think there's been a question about the safety of the attenuation ponds. Are they to be fenced off?
I don't have details on that, but sort of as part of the conditions.
Normally.
Yeah, I would assume they will be normally, but that would be sort of considered with the boundary treatment conditions, the safety of that.
And the last one might be the tricky one. This site was specifically considered in the preparation of the neighbourhood plan and was rejected, and the rejection was upheld by the examiner. What were the reasons for it being rejected?
My understanding, because the numbers for the neighbourhood plan area to sort of meet the core strategy target were met, so this would be in addition of, at that time, this would have been in addition to those requirements. So therefore, given the democratic process of it, that it was not wanted by the locals, then the inspector was not minded to amend the development boundary to include it. So I think the inspector was didn't have a particular objection to it, other than that the sort of local community did not want it.
And their housing allocation has been met.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see you, Councillor Stanger, next. Were you wanting to ask a question? I wasn't sure. I saw a hand at one point. Thank you. Councillor Stanger.
Just a quick question about what constitutes major development, because I know it's different to the planning kind of. So this is within the Highfield industrial landscape, isn't it? So is it a planning judgment? Or so I know obviously it's in context of the local area dwellings and stuff like that, but obviously because I was looking at 10, but that's not really a figure, is it?
When you consider major development, you are looking at the scale and nature in relation to what's already there, as well as the actual quantum of what's being built and the nature of it and things. So in terms of, it's in the report at 7.4.3, it talks about major development, what may constitute it in this situation. 41 dwellings in the context is a relatively small percentage of the size of Roberts Bridge. It's been reduced in size overall the scheme. It's a small linear development that picks up and reflects the character of the area with the additional landscaping and things. It doesn't constitute major development as far as we're concerned. But,
Can I
just add in, based on Councillor Stanger's question, you made reference to 10 dwellings. It's important to clarify there are two different, often confusing definitions of what major development is. So in terms of, planning applications in general, you get minor applications and major applications are generally, in terms of dwellings, anything 10 dwellings and above. For commercial development, I think, is it 1,000 square metres and above, that is major development. The other definition, which we are talking about here, is major development in the context of the High Weald National Landscape and the MPPF, which James refers to in the committee report at paragraph 7.4.3. So do refer there. It is, yes, you have to look at proposals on a case-by-case basis. So you look at, so in terms of this proposal, you're looking at the settlement of Roberts Bridge, how much the settlement would be increased by, what the population would be increased by, is it significant in terms of the overall High Weald designation? So you look at, what's going to be impacted. So James explains in the report, or the report explains, officers do not believe this is major in the context of the village of Roberts Bridge, but you do have to look at it in context. So, if you were looking at a smaller village somewhere and they were proposing a large increase, it could be major.
One other question, sorry. I know it's been asked a million times, but is there any way you can not force or condition the affordable, if it was minded to go that way, that if it could be built first or not be removed? Or I know it's viability and all that stuff, but it just seems, I know it's a big issue for colleagues and generally for officers.
Yes, we appreciate that concern. I think we've sat here in committee many times talking about viability and, how can we make people build. I mean, we've heard from Divine Homes representative today saying they've got an agreement with Orbit Homes, which sounds positive. So I would take that as we sit here today, it's viable to provide the affordable housing. As we all know, that can change in the future, but it will be secured by legal agreement. If the situation changes in the future and affordable is not viable, it will have to come back before you to consider the details. And as you know, that will be independently assessed. You'll get to review it thoroughly. If you don't agree,
you can never. The main thing I was looking at, there's no way of ever conditioning, we want you to build X amount of percentage of them first before you kind of get on to something else. Just as a general point.
It is case by case, and sometimes it can be specified within the legal agreement.
Thank you.
Councillor Creaser.
On the face of it, this looks like a really good scheme. It seems to have been very well thought out. They've gone to a great deal of trouble to get everything in place. My view or concern is obviously the social housing, because we know I like that, which I'm quite happy about. The problem you have is that it's on a site that really is very controversial in terms of where it is, and the feeling from the local people. Now, obviously, the feeling from the local people, as much as we like to respect that, is not in law. So that makes it a bit tricky. But we've already got 2 sites that are already in the mix in that village. And I say village because it's going to get real big real quick. Now, if all of those properties are built out, you're going to then have a problem that you're going to have an awful lot of people. Have you got enough schools? Have you got enough doctor places and all the rest of it? So we are looking at a settlement not just a development in a larger area, it is a settlement already. And obviously the character of it, if we're going to start losing all of that, surely that is not an acceptable impact on the high-wield national landscape things. So I would be, as I say, I actually really think this is a very well thought out scheme. I like the way they put a lot of effort into getting everything in place, but it feels like they're putting the cart before the horse in terms of you've got the other sites that's still there.
Is there a question?
Yes. And I want to know how long it is, really, how long it is expected before the other sites come forward. And should we wait until they are in the mix? Because they're already there. I mean, they're up there. I mean, the housing people from the government have made a decision. Homes England, that's what I couldn't remember the name of it. So I would like to know if Homes England is going forward, bringing in a massive amount of homes, how is it going to affect this and the overall character of that place, particularly as it is quite a lot of protected area that they're looking at introducing, notwithstanding the fact that it looked like they've done a good job of what they're trying to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt, you can tell us how long a piece of string is, please.
Half its length times 2. But, anyway, yes, thank you, Councillor Creaser, and also Councillor Meir earlier, because you picked up on the point of the mill site and what Homes England have produced on their website, so that's useful. Just looking back at the history of Hodson's Mill, there was a planning application under a 2017 reference that received permission for 96 dwellings. That actually lapsed in July 2024. There were issues there over viability, deliverability, and yeah, Homes England got involved, have bought the site. Since they bought the site, they have been in discussions with us. That is detailed on the website, and yeah, public consultation. It is looking positive, but there's a way to go with negotiations and firming up exactly how many dwellings can be considered. As it's been referenced, they are looking at additional land to the north to try and increase numbers on the site. Whether that's possible is going to be down to one of the main things is landscape impact. There will have to be a balance, like many planning cases. So we are in informal discussions. There is no planning application from them as it stands. There is no extant permission on there. There are lots of issues with that site. We haven't got any... Sorry? We haven't got a time frame that I'm aware of that we can really rely on. Even if there was a permission granted in the next few years, there's still risk there as development goes on. So yes, I don't know how long the bit of string is, I'm afraid, but that's the situation and a very brief history of the site.
Thank you. Yes, because I'm going to have the last one.
Okay, it's really a point that Councillor Prochak brought up, which is there is no rush. There is still 5 years. Now, that 5 years is for what? Can we put this on a back burner? Can we wait? Because this may not be the ultimate solution. I hear what Sarah is saying, but we're not supposed to be housing the whole of Rother on this site. I mean, hopefully this is for people in our immediate area who require housing. So there is a lot more to consider than just, should we give it planning permission today? Because we could be making a grave error if in the call for sites, for example, something else comes up. Am I right in going along with Councillor Prochak's view, which is we have time still to consider before we have to come down heavily in the direction of a site, be it any site or this one.
Sarah?
I think, yes, there is still 5 years, but we've already had 7 years and we've no housing built. So are we then saying we're reliant on 100-odd dwellings all being built out in the next 5 years, but then you're still only looking at an allocation from 7 years ago? What we need to be moving on is the fact that not only have we not had the allocations from 7 years ago built, we're now getting into the realms of looking for more housing to be built. You're all aware of the change in government stance and the quite dramatic increase in housing numbers that they are expecting us to find. So the concern here is that, yes, as I said just a moment ago, even if Hodgson's Mill comes along, even if all the other sites that are already allocated do come forward in the next 5 years, they are still not going to achieve the numbers that we need to find, not just across the district, but for Robertsbridge itself. To pick up on Councillor Creaser's question, yes, Robertsbridge is a village, but it is a large village. It has got a primary school, it has got a secondary school, it has got shops, it has got a railway station, it has got buses and things. It's got a lot of facilities in Robertsbridge. It is one of our larger villages that is more sustainable than a lot of others. So from that point of view, you know, that's all part of the mix that we need to consider. Yes, we do need to consider the impact on the AONB and that this is a part of undeveloped site within the village area. The village, in effect, goes around it, which you'll see if you look at the plan extract from the neighbourhood plan that's on page 7 of your agenda. You know, you can see how this is a green finger that comes into the village. So yes, that is a consideration. Do you want that green finger sort of edged away a bit? But then, you know, equally, where do we put development? You're always looking at it primarily on the edges of places, and it's whether this is an acceptable edge that you're looking at here.
Thank you. Councillor Beer.
With some trepidation, I ask this. We've heard about the government housing requirement and the standard method and so on. I know that is very difficult in an area such as Rother with 85% national landscape, wetlands, SSSIs and so on. I thought that we were challenging the government over that and trying to negotiate the figures downwards. I don't know what's happened to that.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, as you know, we're working on a new local plan at the moment. About 90% of the area of the district is constrained by AONB designations. You've accurately described SSSIs, habitat designations. So I think it is likely as we move forward with the local plan that we won't be meeting our full housing need. And it's important to say every district area thinks it's special for various reasons and why they can't meet the need. But, you know, AONB is a very different designation than Greenbelt, for example, where the government very clearly will expect you to meet your needs. So I don't think we'll be meeting our full need. That being said, the AONB is not immune to housing pressures and will certainly need to make a contribution to housing as we go forward, as indeed it has done ever since it was designated. So, you know, I don't think that affects the application before. You've got an application here to determine, to which you need to give great weight to the AONB. But as officers, you can see the recommendation here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, I'm going to come to a question. I've got a couple of points, but I just want to introduce this with, I'm always concerned, and I generally try to keep quiet, that people attribute more kudos or expertise or special knowledge to the chair. I'm not. I'm just a member of this committee who you elected to get the meetings from the start to the finish. I have no special whatever, but I try not to say stuff so that people don't go, all the chairman said. So this is me as a member of the planning committee asking a question, and I've got a couple of observations. and it actually shows how conflicted I am over this application. My predisposition has flipped and flopped every time I've read it and looked at it. And I'm still not quite sure. So my first question is, in paragraph 9.3, you state that paragraph 14 of the NPPF doesn't apply. Now, frustratingly, we've got the left-hand bit of the government that says to residents, you can influence development in your neighbourhood by spending a great deal of time, money and effort, in Robertsbridge's case 3 years, to come up with your own neighbourhood plan. Robertsbridge did that, and after close scrutiny by the inspector and overwhelming support from their residents, they agreed on a neighbourhood plan which I think actually covered from 2016 to 2028, but wasn't made until 2018. And I know Mr Eldridge referred to the fact it's now 7 years old. Yes, but when the application went in, it was only 4 years old. And we've got the right hand of the government, through section 14 of the NPPF, saying that when such a plan is only halfway through its life, it's out of date and it should no longer be given significant weight. To allow a neighbourhood to come up with a plan for 10 years, or to require them to make a 10-year plan, and then to only, especially one that meets its housing needs, and then to only say it's got credence for the first 5 years is utter madness. So my question is, although I cannot give it significant weight that was referred to in paragraph 14, I presume I can give it the weight that I think is appropriate to be given in this case. I presume, is that right? Thank you. There was a question mark there somewhere. It doesn't say no weight, it just says I can't give it significant weight. Presumably, I can still give it the weight that I think appropriate.
I will attempt to answer this. I will refer to the report, the officer report before you, because we go through the planning balance exercise there, and it explains why, well, before we get to paragraph 14, you need to consider paragraph 11 of the NPPF and whether part 1 or 2 applies. We're saying there are no clear reasons to refuse this, therefore the tilted balance applies, paragraph 2, which is then when you go on to paragraph 14. We, as decision makers, you have to determine any application in accordance with the development plan. In this case, you've got the core strategy, DASA and neighbourhood plan, which forms part of the development plan, together with any material considerations, which includes, so the NPPF is a material consideration. I think we're all aware of the recent increased push for housing and the additional needs pressure that is put on us. So, and that, yeah, we have to give significant weight to additional housing. Against that, yes, you have to, the NPPF is a material consideration, and paragraph 14, and that's a consideration here, and the fact there is a neighbourhood plan, you can give weight to, but I think it is that overall balance, and we have explained in the planning balance that we believe the benefits of this outweigh, you know, the negatives. One of the negatives is the fact there is a neighbourhood plan here, and yeah, it comes into the mix. But I think what we're saying as officers is the overall benefits outweigh that, and we've got to acknowledge the great need for housing.
Thank you. Councillor Stanger.
Yeah, thank you. 2 things. One would be how tightly balanced was this decision kind of, is it this relevant, or in a sense, I'm just trying to get a feeling from officers of how tightly balanced it was for officers.
So it's an excellent question. I think, as Matt said, you know, the neighbourhood plan is part of the development plan, but you have then got paragraph 14, given that, and the fact that it's over 5 years and the great need for housing, as Matt said. To answer your question, from an officer perspective, and you are the decision makers, as you well know, rather than us, from an officer perspective, it was not a finely balanced decision. We acknowledge, and James, in his excellent presentation and in his report, acknowledged where there are benefits to this and where there are disbenefits to this. From an officer perspective, this was not, this was not a finely balanced decision. This is a clear recommendation from your officers as how to go. That being said, I can see, you know, there are things that you've got to weigh up here, and perhaps I'll return to some of those later if I can, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, we can move on to discussing. Okay, everyone, let's kick off with any discussions, because you have a go, because then I'll come second with mine.
Right. The neighbourhood plan is and the care with which it's been put together are indicative of the way that Robertsbridge looks at everything. You know, this is a village that really cares about itself, so that when 160 people say, we don't want this development here, I would actually sit up and listen. I have to say I have done my very best as a resident of a nearby village to look at this objectively, and also to say, from what I have seen of Robertsbridge, they care deeply. And if they say, let's wait, we're doing a call for sites, we are getting positive vibes about the mill site, I would actually say, let's listen. And that brings me to say, I think this application in that setting is too premature. We're looking here at what is vaguely an urban layout. You know, this is not in keeping with what we know of the beauty of Robertsbridge. Robertsbridge is one of those places that people drive through and say, I didn't realise it was as lovely as this, and it really is beautiful. Yes, okay, so, you know, it's going to be much easier for people to come and go from the site. You know, if you're, there's one shop in Robertsbridge. Parking is an absolute nightmare. It is just awful to try and find anywhere to park. However, you know, I hear from Mr. Lay about, you know, there are going to be benefits for the village. You know, it would be nice to know what those are, because I don't actually see anything at the moment. But I do think we should be waiting. I don't think this is necessary to build this now. I think that what is going on with Southern Housing in the mill site can be very exciting. But I think whatever we do, we must remember that the key things about building in the rural areas, and particularly in our particularly beautiful part of the rural area, is that we should have conserve and enhance at the beginning of absolutely everything that we do. Dark skies, conserve and enhance. I don't see conserve and enhance on that development at all. You know, it is, okay, so let's have a look at the houses in the village. Let's see what sort of bits and pieces we can pick up from that, slap it on the houses. I don't see that. A straight line of houses, 41 houses, with the poor old affordable houses stuck in one corner in flats. Where on earth else can you find that in Robertsbridge? It's a complete nonsense. So it's okay. I can hear all the arguments. I can hear policies are out of date and all the rest of it. But I still think we have the right as a planning committee to look at this very carefully and say, what is the knock-on effect of what, if by giving it planning permission, we actually inflict on Robertsbridge? We're going to urbanise the Bishop's Lane by pulling out hedges. We're going to be putting in accesses. It's a sunken lane. It's medieval. We're talking here about a couple of medieval fields which are hundreds and hundreds of years old, cleared possibly by the first settlers in Robertsbridge, who had to hack down all the trees so they could actually give themselves a bit of land in which they could grow their crops. That is what these two fields are. They are medieval. Why have we got the right? Because we're in a rush now, for some apparent reason. It wasn't a rush last year, it wasn't a rush in a couple of years ago. Suddenly, the government is saying, build, 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 and we're going, hang on, this is our village, this is a village which we are very proud of. Why do we have to conform to that right at this moment? Let's hang on, wait for the call for sites, wait for what goes on at the mill, wait to see what other sites come up. I know there's one off the High Street, owned by the diocese. There's another one, I think, off George Hill, which we went and had a look at. I mean, I know that these sites exist. They're going to come back. Please don't let me in a rush to give this to what is the village's definitely second, possibly third, fourth or fifth choice. Let's keep it on the back burner. Let's have a think about it. Let's please, as far as I can see, I don't see the need for giving it planning permission today. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Chair. I totally agree with what Councillor Barnes has said, and you've touched on my biggest concern, which is the impact on Bishop's Lane. We know this is an ancient drover's way. We walked down it. It is a wonderful example of a sunken lane. To rip out these hedgerows, to widen this lane, we totally destroy part of the heritage of Robertsbridge. So for that reason alone, I'm hugely concerned about this application, because it just destroys part of the history of Robertsbridge. And once it's gone, it's gone.
Thank you. I caveat my next comment with, again, the bit about I'm not the chair, I'm only the planning committee member. I just want to make a comment. I've got real doubts about the efficacy of a requirement for the developer to make a financial contribution to East Sussex County Council Highways for improvements to bus services. Apart from Flexibus, East Sussex County Council do not actually run any bus services and cannot compel the private companies who do so to do anything with their services. And I'm not sure how giving East Sussex Highways and just £41,500, because that's what the total is for this development, is going to be anything near to delivering a bus improvement. Are we as a local planning authority able to ask them how they intend to spend that £41,500 to improve the bus services in relation to this application? I doubt that we are, because they just want the money. And as there's no one else, I'll go on to my next one. So many of the objectors... Sorry.
I think was about to answer you.
Oh, go on then.
Yeah, I always do listen to the chair, and all other members, of course. So I think that I'm not privy to the exact details, but East Sussex will have had to set out how they come to that figure, and it would be, further discussed in the Section 106 discussions if you are minded to grant this planning permission. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So many of the objectors, and obviously the parish council representative, and many of the discussions talk about the other sites which were improved and the lack of development on them, and we've heard they're coming. This site was not considered then because other sites collectively met the figure. It was therefore left as a big white open space on the map outside the development. It wasn't designated for a specific use. It wasn't coloured for housing. It wasn't, unfortunately, covered as a local green space, which is on the other side. So it was just a big blank space. Therefore, I believe that any reasonable person could be forgiven for thinking that as a big white blank space outside the development plan, it wouldn't become the subject of a planning application within 4 years of their plan starting. Unfortunately, this is planning. And without a designation, and rather not having a 5-year land supply, this big white open space is up for grabs, over and above the allocated sites. I know the government changed, the targets have changed, but it's clear that the wishes of the residents of Salehurst and Robertsbridge haven't. And this highlights my quandary. If I say yes, I go against the properly expressed views of the residents who believed in contributing to and supporting the neighbourhood plan that they were ensuring development would not take place in line with that plan, outside that plan. But paragraph 14 of the NPPF directs that I cannot give that significant weight. But if I say no to an application that's been made policy compliant by the addition of the Section 106 agreements and conditions, I open the council not only losing an appeal, but also having costs awarded against it for being unreasonable. This has become even more of a risk given a recent appeal decision where the government's inspector allowed an appeal giving great weight to the building of just one home and not the 41 that we're talking about. I'm still in that quandary. It doesn't make it any easier. Councillor Creaser.
As the officers have gone to a huge amount of trouble and hard work, if we were to say no to this, what's the likely outcome? Will we be taken to appeal? And what's the likelihood, and this is another piece of string, of us getting fined massively and it going ahead anyway?
Following on from what I said, that explains why Mike just said, I want to speak. So, go on, Mike, it's come sooner than you thought.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I will answer that, but I did want to make a few other comments, if I may as well. That I think this application, and I'm going to pick up a few points and finish on your question. So, this application has been with the council since 2022. This is not to criticise the case officer who inherited it from somebody else, but this has been with us for some time already. We talked about the new government's, not so new anymore, increased emphasis on housing. I think the recommendation, to be fair, would have been the same under the previous NPPF. We were under a lot of pressure on our 5-year housing land supply then. So I would, I think we do need to determine this application. I think in terms of, I've already mentioned in response to Councillor Meir, the AONB isn't immune on housing pressures, and it's traditionally always provided a supply of housing. The housing targets that we've got are not speed limits. They're not limits to what we can achieve. They're minimum targets, and I think that's important to say. We've already said, Matt's already said that the neighbourhood plan is part of the development plan. It's important, but we've all heard about paragraph 14 and the implication of that. I think, to my mind, what you're effectively doing is weighing up the benefits of this proposal, which from an officer perspective are significant, actually. You're weighing up the benefits against the disbenefits and making a judgment on that. I think the prematurity questions are well put, but I think I would urge you not to go down a prematurity reason for refusal, given the need for housing, given the neighbourhood plan is more than 5 years old. If you are concerned about this, I suggest it, and it's for you to decide, this is just my advice, I suggest it turns on that landscape impact and the fact that you are in an AONB. The fact that there is an impact on the sunken lane, the fact that there is the loss of the field, which you need to give great weight to. I think that, in my view, it's not a major development within the purposes of the NPPF. In fact, in my view, it's some way off that, actually. So I would urge you, again, your decision, not to go down the major development route. I think it comes down to whether you think whether the impact it turns on the impact on the AONB. And if you think that there is harm here that outweighs the disbenefits, then you can form the view that paragraph 11D gives you a strong reason to refuse this, if that's what you feel. From an officer perspective, you see that we've come down on the other side of the fence on this one. A final comment from me is, before I get to the question, is in terms of the highways, we're familiar, aren't we, as a committee, with existing highway situations, and then a new development comes along, and people understandably want that to address everything that's going on around it. The Browns Bridge is an existing issue. You've heard the professional advice, which is that this is safe and that the lane can accommodate it. We saw how busy the lane could be when we were on site, but I think there would be difficulty refusing given the absence of technical evidence to support that position. So again, it turns on the impact in landscape, in my view. In terms of chances at appeal, it's one person. Sorry, I finally got to your question. It's one person. We'll see. We'll see how they go, but there is, clearly the policy is set up here for to try and incentivise the provision of housing. But AONB is something you need to give great weight to. It's an important consideration here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
What's the answer? You don't know. Basically, I mean, like, come on.
The thing is, it's very difficult to say that what one person is going to, and I appreciate this is politicians, it's very difficult to say what one person is going to do in that situation. My view would be that this does meet the criteria and that it is acceptable. I don't think that if you were to, we talked about costs here, so I think having a concern with the landscape impact is a legitimate planning judgment that you can exercise, and we can defend that if that's the way you come down on it. I think putting a highways reason in, given what I've just said, that would be more vulnerable at cost. I hope that's a little bit clearer. So thank you.
Yeah, I think if I was a Robertsbridge resident, I'd be very annoyed that the highways don't think that's a problem. It should be being dealt with anyway, separate to this. Just a question there on Mike, though. A lot of people, including me, have referred to the neighbourhood plan. The things you've just said, to me, are encompassed in that neighbourhood plan, that the residents considered the sunken lane, the field, the landscape. And so, although it's not been, those aspects haven't been brought out, lots of references have been made to the neighbourhood plan, which I take to include references to those things. Is that right?
That's reasonable, yes. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Graham.
Yeah, just to follow up on the point of the neighbourhood plan, if the neighbourhood plan were to say we in Salehurst and Robertsbridge don't want any houses to be built anywhere, then I wouldn't put great weight to the neighbourhood plan. But his neighbourhood plan is considered, I think, up to, is this the 5th site, and there's an additional 4. The report is excellent, but did sort of not give us a contemporary reflection of what's going on the other site. And if we're starting to measure in months, but I mean, planning is years. So I don't take the it's out of date or it's not happening quick enough just because we've had a new government coming in. I mean, what we're weighing up here is a failure for 50 years of house building in this country by all types of government, all colours, versus local democracy in action, which is taken very seriously by that parish, and they've done an enormous amount of work. And the residents do want to build houses, and they have identified places where to build houses. It kind of breaks my heart looking at this particular application, because why on, we get Lego blocks built everywhere on every plan, and here are some really attractive houses. Here are lots of 1 and 2 bedroom units for young people and old people downsizing. It's exactly what we need, but it's smack bang in the middle of what has deliberately been left as a green space, so that it doesn't turn into an urban town and it remains a rural village. And that is in the high-wheeled natural landscape. And so I'm like Brian, I'm very, very finely balanced, but I think local democracy and the environment and the availability of lots of other alternatives means it is not unreasonable to refuse this application.
Councillor Stanger.
Hello, yeah, just to see where we are at the moment. Struggling with this a lot. It's because the Robertsbridge have put a lot of effort in. They're accepting other housing in other places, but still come back to where we was at the last planning committee. Bexhill and the large towns are taking more than their fair share of what they can build and what they can take. And as Rotherham's whole district, I think we all have to equally share the housing, and then that's difficult. I know it's contentious, but that's a district. We have to look at that. And I've got 1,000 potentially in my ward, so it is what it is, and semi-rural. But yeah, it's a balance, and I fully respect Robertsbridge and their right to and see when they want housing, and if that the mill site comes forward, to be amazing. And I'm struggling. I'm on the fence still, but it's unfair just to categorise in one small part of our overall district. That's my perspective.
Thank you. We're getting awfully close to the time where you have to get off that fence. Councillor Barnes.
Yes, let's get off the fence. I would like to propose refusal.
That's second.
I'm indicating to speak.
Right, okay. Park that. Councillor Mear.
Yes, first of all, for the benefit of people in the room and those listening at home, I'm a non-voting member of this committee, and so if you see me not voting, that's the reason. I'm not abstaining. What I would say about this particular application is, first of all, that I would like to congratulate Mr. Eldridge and Divine Homes for bringing this forward to where we are now through the best possible methods of negotiating with Rother, with all the agencies, National Landscape in particular, and coming up with a design which, if this were on an allocated site, I would bite everyone's hands off to have.
Yes.
I would be very happy with it, and I agree completely with Councillor Groner there.
Yes.
Even to the extent of the sunken lane, and Councillor Prochak, I feel your pain on the sunken lane. You'll remember a case in my own ward where I tried to defend one. But I think even that wouldn't have tipped the balance for me here. It's a very short section, and there are substantial improvements to footways and the road itself. Overall, I see that as a considerable improvement. The thing is, this whole spatial thing of the future of Robertsbridge. We know there are alternatives. We know the neighbourhood plan. And we have to think, I would like to think, that we have to think forward 50 years, 100 years, to how we would like to see, Robertsbridge. And we know how people would like that. We can anticipate that there would be future development further out. What we have here is a potential green corridor through a larger developed space. And I really dislike the way in which paragraph 11 of the NPPF seems to take away any opportunity to think strategically and to think long term and to think ahead, when this is exactly what planning's all about.
Yeah.
That's what we should be doing. And if this committee can find ways through that maze and difficulty, I wish you luck. It's one of those occasions when perhaps I feel glad that I can't vote. It's very, very difficult.
Yes.
Right, thank you. So, Councillor Mrs Barnes proposing that we refuse planning permission. We'll come to the reasons in a moment. Is there anybody... Sorry? One moment. Yeah, I'm just going. And Councillor Gray is seconding that proposal. We're now going to formulate the reasons why. Starting with you, Councillor Barnes.
I think it's for the reasons that I outlined on the beauty of the landscape, on the importance of that nearby medieval landscape to add to the attraction of Robertsbridge. I know I've got to be careful that I dwell on that bit of it, but I think that we actually look at the features that we would be destroying, and I think I'm much more aware that we have other developments coming in the pipeline. But in the words of the inspector in 2018, I think it was, who said, yes, we could consider this one, but only after we've looked at the mill site. And that was what he said in 2018. And I think we should remember what he said, and I think that's what we should be doing. Now, make that into some sort of sense, I don't know.
I was just going to ask...
Yes,
I know it's always difficult for the officers because they've given us their professional opinion, and we're now saying, help with your other professional hat on. But what you were referring to there is almost somehow bringing in that we want to give more weight to the neighbourhood plan, than otherwise the officer
And
did.
we're not allowed to do that.
Well, I don't know. That's what I'm...
Well, we are allowed to do that.
Because that's what you were saying, in a way, that you were saying there's
All
other
those-
sites,
all those-
which refers back to the neighbourhood plan,
Yes.
which 14 says we can't give significant weight to, but possibly we're saying we want to give more weight to. But over to the experts.
Right, so here is my advice. I'm hearing in the main concerns over the impact on the High Weald National Landscape. It was referred to earlier that the neighbourhood plan made reference to these things and certain features, and I think you can incorporate that within the reason for refusal. It needs, our advice as officers is that the reason focuses on the harm to the AONB, but you can make reference to the neighbourhood plan within that.
Availability of alternative sites is not.
So that relates to prematurity, and there is a paragraph within the NPPF which deals with that. Paragraph 51. I can read that out if it would be of use. I will read or not.
Well, I was just going to say, I suspect the danger of including alternative sites is that, well, this is just an additional site. That, you know, so it's not... The application in front of us. Yeah. We've got to deal with the application in front of us, which...
Yeah. Can I just add something here, just to supplement what Matt is saying? I think that you're dealing with the application in front of you would be my strong advice. The thing is, I know that you've all been on site, you've all given this serious consideration. So, you know, it isn't difficult for us as officers to advise you what to do, because we can, you know, we can see what some of the debate is saying. I think the Hodgson's Mill site to some degree is a bit of a red herring, to be honest, because I'm not sure the recommendation, given the push for housing in paragraph 11, I'm not sure the recommendation would have been different even if it had gone further forward. So I think you need to focus the reason down, and Councillor Barnes has done that. It's your decision, it is your decision, but I would recommend that prematurity is not a strong reason here. Can I also suggest that Matt does just read paragraph 51, Chair, if that's okay, of the NPPF, just to back up. And he was about to do that before I interrupted him. So.
No, I think I interrupted him first.
However, whilst Mike has been talking, I have looked at the neighbourhood plan, and we've got mention of Bishop's Lane many times. So, yeah, 1.4.2 heritage. It says Bishop's Lane, it's referred to as a historic routeway. We have, reference to trees along Bishop's Lane. So I think we can, what I'm going to say is we can make use of the neighbourhood plan, definitely. NPPF, or would you...
When Station Road was closed, there was apparently a sign saying unsuitable for a diversion. So how do we square that with highways?
They're the experts, aren't they?
They're the experts.
Well, they're the experts who claim that it's unsuitable for a diversion.
You won't win on that, will we?
So, are we now stretching for those words now? Or are we able to, I don't want to leave it to you because we should give our reasons, but it is basically harm to the High Weald National Landscape. And then, well, I suppose, because any such appeal would look at this recording and would see how much we emphasised the neighbourhood plan and all it contains about harm to the national landscape.
51 does mention about how far the plan is and stuff like that.
Come on in. Stop looking at the neighbourhood plan and go to 51.
Right. Right. Paragraph 51 of the MPP.
Go on then.
So, paragraph 51 says, refusal of planning permission on grounds of prematurity, can't say it, will seldom be justified where a draft plan has yet to be submitted for examination, or, in the case of a neighbourhood plan, before the end of the local planning authority publicity period of the draft plan. Where planning permission is refused on grounds of prematurity, the local planning authority will need to indicate clearly how granting permission for the development concerned would prejudice the outcome of the plan-making process.
So it's all pre-plan making. From that, it was about planning and...
Yeah.
I don't...
Guys, is the other plan, and that makes it premature? What?
No, I think that meant that if the neighbourhood plan was still being written, we couldn't be talking about prematurity before it's been written, and it would affect the writing of it. But once it's been written, there's nothing mentioned there about once the plan's been written, is it? No? I didn't hear anything about once a plan has been written.
No, but I think you need to bear in mind that we are revising the neighbourhood plan is out of date, and paragraph 14 is more than 5 years. So this is really, you're really thinking ahead, and the review of the current neighbourhood plan or the new neighbourhood plan. I think that's what we're talking about in terms of prematurity.
Yeah.
Do you want to add to that, Mike?
No, I agree. I think to put it in a nutshell, it backs up what I said a few minutes ago, that I don't think prematurity here is a good reason for refusal. You'll be aware of the benefits and disbenefits of this proposal. You've got to make a judgment. I think what I'm hearing is, with the motion, which we've not yet voted on, hearing the concern in terms of the impact on the AONB. We've heard some of those impacts, and that will be, if that motion is carried, that will be made with reference to the harm that's created in terms of and reference to the neighbourhood plan as well. That would be important as part of the development plan. What I'd propose is, if that motion is carried, is that reason for refusal is agreed between myself and the Chair of Planning Committee before any decision is issued, if that motion is carried. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. One moment. Thank you. So the motion before us is to refuse planning permission because of the harm to the High Weald National Landscape. Moved by Councillor Mrs Barnes, seconded by Councillor Gray. All those in favour of refusing, please show. No, sorry, my mistake, Councillor Pritchett. Sorry, all those in favour of refusing the application, please show. Yeah, I got distracted. So can you please show again if you're in favour of refusing the application? Please show. And those against? That is carried. Permission is refused. Sorry? Oh, any abstentions? Oh, sorry, one abstention. One moment. Sorry, I'm just going to... There was just some confusion there. Why does it happen? So, again, those in favour of refusing the application, please show and keep your hand up till Julie says yes. 4. Thank you. Those against refusing the application? 3. And those abstaining? 1. Thank you. So that is carried. Planning permission is refused. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say say this, but I would echo Councillor Groan and Councillor Mears' points that this is a really good development, just in the wrong place. Thank you.
Chair, I thought I was allowed to...
Yes, I know, I'm sorry, I missed that moment.
Could I just speak, and for the reassurance of members, this is...
No, sorry. Sorry, Councillor Projap. My fault. I know, but my fault. It was before the vote. That was my fault.
We have a toilet break.
Definitely a break. So we're now breaking for 20 minutes. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome back to this morning's Planning Committee meeting. We're now considering the next 3 items on the agenda. The first one under agenda item 8, application RR 2025/654/P. It's an application to modify the Section 106 agreement associated with a planning permission 2022-1246 to remove an obligation to provide a public arts strategy contribution and proposed amendments to the highway work obligations. This is at Mountview Street, Bexhill, and it's been referred to the committee by the head of planning as it's a modification of a planning obligation with financial commitments. The recommendation is that it be resolved to approve the modification of the 106 planning obligation to remove the art and public realm contribution and vary the highway work obligations to include a minor works agreement delegated subject to completion of a deed of variation. No one has registered to speak on this application, therefore the planning officer, who is it doing this one? James again, will present the report to the committee and will then be asked questions by the committee members. Remember, questions before we then go into deliberations. So the first bit is questions and then go to discussions. So please, James.
Thank you, Chair. So application RR 2025/654P seeks to modify the Section 106 agreement associated with planning permission RR 2022-1246P to remove an obligation to provide a public arts strategy contribution and propose amendments to the highway works obligations. Members are directed to the update sheet which has been circulated. This clarifies that Vistry Homes Limited and not the NHS Trust would undertake the essential highway access works via the minor works agreement. The circa 4 hectare site is located on the urban fringe of Bexhill within the development boundary and was recently granted permission for the erection of an inpatient mental health facility, subject to conditions and a planning obligation. Next slide, please. The mental health facility supersedes the previous outline application for this site. Previously, the site formed part of a residential-led, mixed-use urban extension which included over 1,000 dwellings. The planning obligation for the previous outline application required a financial contribution of £1,200 per dwelling to be paid towards the provision of public art and the improvement of public realm in Bexhill Town Centre. As you can see on this slide, the mental health facility is currently under construction, and this application seeks modification of the Section 106 agreement to remove the public art and public realm contribution. In approving the mental health facility, the obligations and conditions relating to the previous outline application were carried over where applicable. However, it is now the case that no new dwellings are proposed on the site, with a mental health facility being constructed that will result in its own benefits to the local and wider area. In addition, the scheme contains its own public art proposals, which are agreed under Condition 42 of the permission. As such, the current wording of the Section 106 agreement in respect of the provision of public art and the improvements of the public realm in Bexhill Town Centre do not provide a necessary planning purpose in relation to the medical site. The development now approved and under construction already brings significant social and economic benefit both to the site and wider area. It is therefore recommended that the Section 106 agreement be varied to remove the financial contribution of £40,000 to be paid towards the provision of public art and improvement of the public realm in Bexhill Town Centre. Next slide, please. It is also proposed to make amendment to the highway work obligations within the Section 106 agreement, so that Vistry Homes Limited can undertake essential highway access works via a minor works agreement. The details of some of these works can be seen on the slide. These works form part of the scope of the main Section 278 works for the wider housing scheme, which is being delivered by Vistry Homes. It has been requested that the works be carried out under a minor works agreement ahead of the main agreement being completed. This is in order to avoid any delays in the mental health facility becoming operational. As a result of the amendments, there would be no detriment to the delivery of highway works required by either the mental health facility or the wider housing scheme. As such, it is therefore recommended that the Section 106 agreement be varied to allow access works to be undertaken via a minor works agreement. These amendments would be agreed with input from the Council's legal team. Next slide, please. Accordingly, it is recommended to approve modification of the Section 106 planning obligation to remove the public art and public realm contribution and vary the highway work obligations to include a minor works agreement delegated subject to completion of a deed of variation. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Any questions before I ask? I'm going to ask the first one. Can I just say, so basically the public works was a mistake from last time, which we're now rectifying.
Essentially, yes.
And the minor works is obvious. They're going to be carried out. We're just changing the person who's taking responsibility. Thank you. Any other questions, please? Councillor Groner.
What happens to the £40,000? Is it being allocated somewhere else? Or?
No, the NHS will keep it. Perhaps they could add it to the buses. No. Councillor Ganley.
Move approval.
Why am I not surprised?
Second.
So approval is moved by Councillor Ganley, seconded by Councillor Stanger. Does anyone else want to? Oh, sorry, I didn't see. Were you trying to speak, or were you seconding, or were you anticipating the vote? Wait for it. Wait for it. So the matter is to grant permission. All those in favour, please show. That is unanimous. Thank you.
Can I move approval of the next one as well?
Moving on to agenda item 9. Wait for it, Councillor Ganley. Application RR 2025/1008P. Variation of condition 2 imposed by RR 2024-935P to amend the drainage system. And this is at the Sidley Recreation Ground, Canada Way, Bexhill. Reason for it today is because it's council-owned land, and the recommendation is resolved to grant full planning permission. Is it? Oh, it's Sarah this time. We've got to wait for the officer's report, Councillor Stanger. Sarah, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this application, as you know, is for variation of Condition 2. Condition 2 is the condition that lists the approved plans. You will recall that you've already considered the Sidley new hub building that they're proposing there. That was granted approval last year. This application is before you because it is council-owned land. Subject to doing detailed survey work and detailed drainage proposals, it has been established that they no longer need to have a pumping station within the proposal. We have got a revised drainage detail which you can see there. That is as per the submissions under the building regulations. Everything is considered to be acceptable. As I say, they now do not need the pumping station, so hence the plan has been revised, and hence the proposal before you to vary the approved plan as listed in condition number 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the officer? This matter open for debate. Councillor Stanger.
Move approval, please. Thank you.
That's why I went to Councillor Stanger first, but one moment. Councillor Groner.
It's not a question, it's a declaration of interest. I've hired Baker Architects to do an application for me. I think I should possibly declare that.
No,
Sorry, I didn't think of that in the beginning because I hadn't
Yeah.
noticed it. So apologies, Chair.
So if you weren't clear, that was Councillor Groner has employed the same architects on his own job. I don't think that would, no. You can still vote. I thank you. That was Councillor Gamley.
Contrary to expectations, I was not about to recommend approval. My question is this: are we legally obliged to bring such applications before the Planning Committee, where it is council-owned land? My legal advisors are not answering. Democratic Services says
It's
yes.
written in the council's constitution.
Thank you. Quite right. Well done.
So Councillor Stanger moved approval. I've missed a seconder. I'll go to Councillor Gray. So all those in favour of granting permission in this case, please show. That's agreed unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 10, which is application RR 2025/902/O. It's a lawful development certificate for the proposed conversion of existing toilets to a store and study space at Bexhill Museum, the old public conveniences, Edgerton Road, Bexhill, TN 39 3HL. And this has come to us because it's council-owned land, and they probably are required by the Constitution to come to us for their lawful development certificates. The recommendation is that it be resolved to issue a lawful development certificate. No one is registered to speak, so the planning officer, which is Matt, will present his report.
Thank you, Chair. These applications are only considered in the context of the relevant legislation, which sets out the extent of works that can be undertaken without requiring planning permission. The application site relates to the public toilets located in the lower ground floor of Bexhill Museum, which is only accessible externally from Edgerton Park. The proposed works essentially seek to convert and integrate the public toilets into the museum space for use in connection with the museum. These works include various internal alterations to provide interconnectivity between the existing museum and the public toilets, and external alterations, mainly to close off the external access. Section 55 of the Town and Country Planning Act provides a definition of the meaning of development. This definition explicitly excludes internal alterations to a building and also external works which do not materially affect the external appearance of the building. In this case, the proposal relates to internal and external alterations which would fall within the defined exclusion category within the legislation. As such, the proposed works would not constitute development, and therefore planning permission is not required. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the officer? The matter's open. Sorry, Councillor Creaser.
They're taking away the toilets, or former toilets. Are there any other toilets close by?
Yes, there are better, newer toilets, including a changing places toilet directly
Is this the
opposite.
thing that's been advertised recently?
If you go back, if you can just bring up the...
What?
I think it was the first photo. There, new public toilets.
Okay, thank you.
And they're not as temporary as they look there. They're on a very solid concrete base. And,
Well, as I don't live in Bexhill, I just wanted to ask.
no.
Okay, fantastic. That's nice to hear.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, the matter is open for debate. But I'm just wondering, Councillor Barnes is gestating a question there. No.
Yes, Chairman, I was. But I don't think it's within the remit of planning to know how much is it going to cost? Was there something about £40,000?
No, I think that was possibly the other one. I don't think there was any reference to this one. Because the cost would never be a planning consideration, would it? Matt?
Yeah, I believe the 40,000 figure was for the Mount View Street application, the art contribution. Yeah, this application, we don't know the cost of the conversion. I don't know. It's not a planning consideration. Thank you.
Councillor Gray.
I recommend approval. I think it's a brilliant idea.
You're moving approval. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Stanger. Before I put it to vote, any more comments? No, okay, so the matter to grant resolve to issue a lawful development certificate in this case. All those in favour, please show. That is unanimous. Thank you. That is carried. Agenda item 11. For members to note, the next scheduled meeting of the Planning Committee is on Thursday the 9th of October, starting at 9:30, with any necessary site visits being conducted on Tuesday the 7th of October, again starting from 9:30. That brings us to the end of this month's Planning Committee meeting. Thank you to everyone for their contributions. Oh, sorry, Councillor Barnes.
Yes, it's really, it's today's application for Robertsbridge. That was a brilliant report, but I have to say I never actually got to the end of it because the time span between receiving the report and doing all the other hundreds of things that I do made it. I just wondered if we could actually have the report perhaps a day earlier so that we can have time to...
Yeah.
Would that be possible?
You could have brought it up after the meeting, but yes, I have discussed before trying to get everything a little bit sooner because if you only get it, which most people do, on the day of the publication of the agenda, you've only got the week. I don't know if, and I'll take it up with Mike, but I get to see them the week before that. I'm very lucky, thank you. I get a whole extra week to read them, and I was to speak to Mike about possibly sending them to you, bearing in mind some of them might not make the agenda. So you may have wasted your time reading one that doesn't get to the agenda. But I think we'd have a pretty good idea of whether it's likely to go or not 2 weeks before. So we'll discuss that. If anyone else would like to see the likely reports, and it depends when the reports are complete as well, but we'll take that under advisement and discuss that and try and get out to you sooner. Thank you. So as I was saying, that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you everyone for their contribution and see you next month. Goodbye.